fantasy move for a 5-0 team right
That's
there.
right. I'm staying on top of it.
God, I hope Ray didn't win. Adam Thielen's had a great year.
Put it here this time, hopefully. We tried to do it last time.
Now recording on my phone.
Sal commented on our Instagram post.
Do this to yourself.
But it's off the tracks. You know how it goes. It's gonna be a fun one tonight.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he was a killer tonight. Like I said, he needed to be. 31 points. He only knocked out 130, but it was the dagger. So can't really say anything. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, it was a very different game from other games in the series where, the Thunder kind of controlled most of the game, and then in the games that they lost, Denver came back in the fourth quarter, and would turn the tide and shift momentum. It was pretty much the opposite of that. Denver had control for most of this game. Thunder came out to a blistering start, got a 10-point lead, and then after that timeout, the Nuggets rallied back and they kind of held on to control. Thunder made a couple runs, but the Nuggets held on to the lead for really the rest of the game until that fourth quarter. It's funny, we were talking about how Lu Dort, it was looking like maybe he doesn't have a spot in this series, and of course, he hits 3 huge threes in that fourth quarter. That's whenever momentum really felt like it was starting to shift in the Thunder's way. But kind of the points that you were making, it finally felt like kind of the series we thought this was going to be heading into this game of just 2 MVP caliber talents. I mean, Jokic had an unbelievable game. Shai had a great game as well, and really came alive there late to help the Thunder take the lead and take the win. It was a huge win. Obviously, it's a huge win. This was a huge Game 5 swing game. I still think there's a lot of room for improvement for this Thunder team in this series. Obviously, Game 6 isn't going to be any cakewalk or any kind of easy game, especially if Jokic is coming alive now, which it looks like he is. So the zone still gave him a lot of trouble. They were able to hit enough threes tonight to overcome that. I don't anticipate Denver shifting out of that defense any. They're still going to play a lot of heavy zones, so it's still going to come down to making shots. Hopefully they're able to do that. What I want to look for, though, from OKC is generating looks elsewhere within that zone whenever the shots are falling, because I think that's going to have to play a factor. They did a good job. There was a couple times with Chet or Hart in the dunker slot there when they were able to attack Jokic in the middle of that zone and kind of pull him up. They found some opportunities there. I think there's some opportunities, weak side drives from J-Dub as well. Hopefully they can exploit those a little bit more and make things easier for them, but it was a huge win, and I'll leave it at that for now.
About how Jokic he hadn't had that game yet in series. He had that game tonight, and one of the reasons we talked about that was because of the fact that the Thunder are going to have to brace, specifically Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to have to be ready for this, and he's going to have to answer back. And it wasn't always pretty at times, but he answered back tonight, and he performed at a really high level when he needed to do the most. And Nikola Jokic, 44 points, 15 rebounds. He knocked down 5 threes, including the unbelievable 3 there to tie the game at 103. It's really funny how you're watching that. And we talked a little bit about this before we went live. Is when he had the ball there at the logo and the shot clock was at about 9-10 seconds. I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, he's going to do the thing again. He's going to just hit the crazy shot. And he did. But the point is, Nikola Jokic played, I mean, it's going to be tough for me to see him playing a better game than this in this series. and the Thunder handled it, and they come out with a win. You know, they had the crowd behind them, and I was really impressed by that Nikola Jokic came out and played the way he did, and the Thunder still were able to come out with a 7-point victory.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this game that you can take right now is, Jokic had an unbelievable game. Murray had some great quarters, some great minutes for the Nuggets. And Brown hit a couple outside shots. Porter kind of a no-show tonight, but there was it was a big game from Jokic, a pretty good game from Murray, and the Thunder were able to weather that storm, especially kind of playing down pretty much the entire game. It was a huge gut check win and a huge swing game for the youngest team in the NBA, and people like to bring up their youth, and I think that it was a huge step forward for them. I'll take it back to last year, pretty much the exact same situation, round 2 for OKC. A game 5 swing game at home against Dallas. They lose that game, and then I don't have to remind a whole lot of Oklahoma City fans about what happens then in game 6 in Dallas. So a huge step forward for them. They have to take advantage of it. They have to continue and obviously try and win game 6. If not, move on to game 7 and try and take that one. But you're in a much better position this year than you were last year, and that's huge.
It's kind of a talking point that I want to bring up as well is with this game 6 being in Denver. There's a very real possibility that this game is going to happen again. And what I mean by that is you're going to play a game 7 where it really feels like it's do or die. I kind of felt like tonight, like you said, you had a big game 5 last year that the Thunder were on the losing end of. This felt like a real do or die game tonight. And should things probably go the way that they're going to be projected to go, the Thunder will probably actually be favored for game 6. But I think there's going to be a lot of people that take Denver. So I don't know if I want to ask, how do you go into Denver and win in game 6, or how do you kind of replicate this performance in front of a home crowd should this go to a game 7?
Well, I think it starts with Shai, as we've been saying really this entire time. If he's able to, I'll say that whenever he started to get going in the fourth quarter, it felt like regular season Shai Gilgeous-Alexander again, which I feel like we haven't really seen this entire series. So that was it was comforting in a way to see that as a Thunder fan, and probably for the rest of the team too, to see that and to see those shots finally start to fall in spots that he normally takes. I'm sure as a fan who maybe hasn't watched the Thunder the entire season or hasn't watched a lot of Thunder games, and you see some of the shots Shai are taking, yeah, they're tough shots. He's settled for some tough shots, but he's made a lot of those shots throughout the regular season as well. So, I trust him, and I think it starts with him. I keep going back to the outside shooting because of the defense that Denver plays and how they pack it in, and they kind of force Shai to go to the spots that they want him to go to. And force the ball into certain hands of certain guys that they want the ball in the hands of. So I'd like to see the Thunder kind of take control and dictate the offense the way they want it to be ran, rather than letting Denver kind of dictate the offense for them, which it felt like they did a lot for a lot of possessions in this series and for most of the game in this game. It's not going to be easy in Denver. It's not going to be an easy game 7 either, even though it's at home if it gets to game 7. So I look for them to try and close out in game 6. Obviously, if you can. I don't think that happens, especially with Jokic coming on the way he's coming on, and just an unbelievable game. I have no doubts in my mind that he follows it up with another great performance. And if Murray's going the way he was going tonight, they're going to be a tough team to beat, especially if they get a little bit more production out of some other guys. So it's not going to be easy, but I think the biggest thing for the Thunder is dictating their offense for themselves rather than letting the opponent dictate it for them.
They just looked like a really mature team late in the game tonight, the Thunder did. I talked about it, I believe it was before game 4, if not at game 4, about how this team has shown maturity at times, but other times it just showed it doesn't know how to win yet. But when Jokic hit that three to tie it at 103, I mean, the crowd just absolutely was seemingly taken out of it. And then you have Jalen Williams come down and hit a big time three. The crowd gets back into it. Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein play phenomenal defense on the other end of the floor. Then you have Shea come down to hit the three, and that was ultimately the dagger. This team looked mature tonight. I was impressed by that. For Denver, how do you bounce back? And now you've got to go win two. One of them has to be on the road at a game 7 in a ruckus environment that you played in tonight. And you really controlled for a good portion of this game, ultimately falling apart at the end. For Denver, you've got Jokic going, but really no one else had it tonight. What do you where does the mindset go for Denver moving into a obviously must-win game 6?
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a bit of a steep hill to climb for them, but it's not impossible, and it's not like it can't be done for them. I think, looking back at this game, even though you lost, you feel good about where you were at. I think they started to settle for some jump shots a little bit. They weren't really forcing much into the paint. I felt like both offenses got their best shots, their best looks, and were most productive whenever they were able to get to the paint first within the possession. And that just opened up everything for everybody. And I thought, the Nuggets kind of settled a little bit. It wasn't that they were taking bad shots, but they weren't forcing the issue in the paint like they were earlier, and helping them build out a lead. So, that's maybe a talking point in the locker room of, hey, we were right there. We just got to finish better. It's been a back and forth series. No team has won. Well, now the Thunder have won 2 games in a row. Before that, no team had won 2 games in a row. So, it's a huge back and forth series. I think you just keep your guys locked in. They've proven they can beat this Thunder team. It's a doable hill to climb. It is a hill to climb now, but it's a doable hill to climb. I don't think it's necessarily panic mode, even though you're now, like you said, obviously in a must-win situation.